Back in 2006, the Australian Coal Association suggested that by the year 2020, about a quarter of total emissions from coal and gas use globally could be recaptured. Well, in the year 2020, about 20 gigatonnes of emissions from those two fuels were released, and 0.04 gigatonnes were recaptured. Not quite a quarter. CCS does exist, and on rare occasions, it sometimes even captures carbon emissions. But it has not solved climate change, and it has not fulfilled the fantasies of wide-eyed fossil fuel executives. What happened here is the fossil fuel industry massively oversold a small, narrow, and expensive technology as if it can solve a major chunk of the climate problem. Big tech uses a similar tactic to greenwash AI, and I was supported by a range of organizations to investigate a little deeper. Google has been claiming for a fair few years now that AI can cut global greenhouse gas emissions by between 5 to 10%. On further investigation, I found this was sourced from a conversation that consulting firm BCG had, which they then extrapolated to the entire species. Separately, Microsoft's sustainability officer has been publishing these opinion pieces in Nature saying that AI could be a net benefit to climate change. That's even when you account for the emissions of data center growth. We collected up 154 separate claims of climate benefit from organizations like the International Energy Agency and companies like Microsoft and Google. We found that the majority of them relate to traditional AI, which has a much lower energy consumption, whereas most of their emissions problem comes from generative AI. But we also found that the evidence that was presented of claims, regardless of what type of AI, was surprisingly weak. Around 3/4 of the claims that we looked at relied on weaker forms of evidence like corporate websites or even no evidence at all. A lot of them didn't share raw data, so I couldn't really verify or check the assumptions that were used. In one example, Google talks about the emissions reductions enabled through the use of an AI solar mapping tool, but they're tallying up the entire emissions avoided by all of those rooftop solar panels over their lifetime. I'm sure that the solar developers also use email, but I'm not about to say that Gmail is going to solve climate change. We're in a CCS situation here again. Global emissions are not going to plummet by gigatonnes because we're using a software tool to improve efficiency in a bunch of processes. We need to regulate fossil fuels, tax big companies, and put a lid on the overconsumption of big tech. Most of all, companies really need to be held to a much, much higher evidentiary standard when they say that AI is going to solve climate change. Please go check out the report. It is packed with so much good stuff. I know that you're going to enjoy it. Thank you.